Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for The Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 1, Taste of Solitude. Before we talk about the show, let's go over the cast real quick so you kind of remember everybody that's on this show. We have Rosamund Pike as Moraine Dondred, the Aes Sedai, Daniel Henney as Lan Mandragon, Zoe Robbins as Nynaeve Almira, who's at the White Tower. We also have Madeleine Madden as Ewain Alvear, who is also at the White Tower. Joshua Stradowski as Rand al'Thor, Marcus Rutherford as Perrin Ibarra. We also have Barney Harris as Matt Cajon, and we have a bunch of other characters. I don't want to go too far into um, the cast to avoid any spoilers, but as we learned last season, we have Ferris as the Dark One. I'll probably get into a little bit of spoilers, so make sure you have seen the episode. But here's some overall thoughts before we get into it. Uh, First of all, I am very glad to be back in this series. I will say, just on a more personal behind the scenes type of note, like all our Wheel of Time content from season one was one of the reasons the channel expanded and grew so much. So I know a lot of you that are longtime subscribers have been waiting. So I'll definitely be covering the series. We got 3 episodes in the first week, so I'll pace it out from here to next week. So here's episode 1. We'll talk more about episode 2 and 3 as well in the future. But I also want to take my time watching these. But I'll definitely get back to it before the release of the next episode. So if you're coming back for Wheel of Time content, I really appreciate it. And also, it was really fun to hear from y'all about how this story was changing and how it was being adapted, because I don't know anything about the Wheel of Time. I've never read the books. It's really the only knowledge I have is what I've seen from season 1 and what I've gathered from y'all telling us about it in the comments. So um, overall, I was very glad to be back to this series. We start out really dark, very dark with this flashback. But I will say, my only complaint, and this is only me as a viewer, is that after the events of the season 1, which felt so grand and so important, right? Like so many cool things happened. Like as we had this group together and they were embarking on this mission, this adventure, but then they fail, which was truly unexpected. I didn't think they were all going to be split up like this, right? Like the group that we followed so much through season 1, even though they were split up like for a little bit as well, in different groups. They are fully split up. Like there's only a couple of people that are hanging out in the same area. And one other thing, as somebody that like, one thing I do appreciate about the platform is that you can see, if you pause the episode, at least on Apple TV, um, or yeah, on the Apple TV, which is where I'm watching this, uh, the X-ray vision will tell you who the characters are on the scene and the location, which to me is very important because I'm very bad at keeping track of characters and places and names. So every time there's a scene with so many people that are like, what's going on? Where are we? What's happening? Like I'll pause it, and then it also helps me with making notes and make sure that I keep things straight. So that's really good. I really appreciate that. I think it's a great part of the service. So let's yeah, like I said, that's really my only qualm is that we're all kind of split up, but we get right into it, right? We see Moraine back. Um, oh, we see Moraine back, and she's lamenting the loss of her connection. And this is really portrayed through the action and the what's going on. She's kind of almost in exile at this place with these other people, right? Lan's there with her, who they've also been, their connection's been severed, so that really looms over the whole episode. But I think it comes back to a really good payoff. In the meanwhile, we also see Ewain at the White Tower. She's now a novice, as well with she's now a novice along with Nynaeve, who they are both working to learn how to control their powers and how to use them. How to use them more effectively. I think we saw last season that they both have a great potential, especially Nynaeve. But yeah, there are now novices. We see a little bit of what I would call hazing, but I think uh, I like that they are paired together because I feel like Elaine is really willing and wanting to learn, but she's still a little hesitant. She has doubts within herself, whereas Nynaeve knows that now from what we saw last season, knows that there's this great power within her. But she's still afraid of it, right? She doesn't want to channel. She doesn't want to she doesn't want to go along with the rules that are being placed by the Aes Sedai that are kind of training them at the White Tower. So we also see that at the White Tower, we see that Matt's there, kind of recovering from his addiction to the power and the dagger and the connection to the dark. But you know, I think that's going to be a threat that we're going to pull, and whenever it happens, I expect a big payoff from that one because we didn't get a lot of it this in this episode. Um, we also see catch up with Perrin and Loyal and in the Westlands. That story feels to me like the one that had the least amount of development. We really focus more on Moraine and everybody at the White Tower, which makes sense. Those are probably two of the more important places. So and I think that the show has a really good pacing when it comes to that. Every time we go somewhere else, we get a really nice big establishing shot, which was something that I love. Just seeing all these really big places. I don't think any of the sets felt like cheap or bad quality, at least not in this first episode. Everything feels, because with I don't know what the budget is of the show, but it's definitely nowhere close to like what the Rings of Power showed us. So, and I don't mean to compare the two properties on the level of the individual property. I just mean that they're both produced by the same studio. So like we can kind of see how the money on the screen is translating. So I also feel really bad for Lan, who now feels like a kind of a warrior without a purpose. Now that Moraine just like I said, the their connection has been severed. They can't feel each other, if you understand from the first season what the connection was. So it's really going to be interesting to explore that because as I mentioned, we get a really nice payoff for some of that stuff towards the end of the episode. Um, we also know that most of the characters believe that Rand is dead. Now, obviously, immediately we are shown that he is in Cairhien. Hopefully, I said that right. And that's one of the things that I paused it. I was like, "This is Rand" because he's got a new haircut, so he looks different. But yeah, we go to Cairhien, and we see that that's where he is. We don't know what's going on there. We didn't get a lot of clues on that, so very interested in that piece of the puzzle. And then we see that Moraine purchases this. She kind of hustles this merchant pirate person, which is really fun. Kind of brought them under false pretenses, like she wanted to buy something bigger, but actually only needed a poem, which was really interesting. We also get to see Nynaeve. She's confronted by one of the red Aes Sedais, which like we know they're the ones that I don't want to say that they're bad, but they're definitely like the more out of control loose cannons. But we get this really cool confrontation and a display of power as well. So we know Nini is very powerful. Just want to make sure that she believes that in herself and practices and trains to control that. Really fun stuff there. And at the end we this last scene looked very dark. Like it was very hard to tell kind of what's going on. But Moraine is chased and ambushed by something. But of course, Lan is there. We get some really cool action, some fighting scenes. So yeah, overall, this was a really really fun episode. I really enjoyed it. This episode was directed by Thomas Napier and written by Amanda Kate Shaman. I should have set that up front, but here we are. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this episode. Let me know how you feel about the pacing, how you feel about everybody kind of being split up. I know in type of this type of fantasy story, it's a very common trope to split the party because they need to grow as characters, right? They need to grow and they need to experience things without each other, and then finally, hopefully, eventually come back. So, of course, we don't get a lot of insight about the Dark One and the big threat looming over everyone, except for that flashback sequence. Have a feeling, and maybe I missed it. I didn't want to click on the X-ray on that one because I didn't want the story to tell me who the little girl was. I wanted that to be more of a natural revelation. So maybe they didn't, maybe they did. So I'm interested to see what's going on there. So if you enjoyed this episode, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. Like I said, we'll be covering episodes 2 and 3 in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. Come back. And as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.